Oh, your favorite podcast has just downloaded, sir. Okay, every now and then, you know, you've got this whole system set up where you're going to be producing weekly podcasts and it's all going to be great. And then, you know, logistics get in the way a bit. It's very difficult to get together. Well, in fact, Jonny Smith and I got together the other day inside his e-Golf in a car park of a Starbucks just outside Silverstone. And we recorded a really, really good, you know, a comprehensive podcast. I was really pleased with it. We had a great laugh doing it. All sorts of interesting and exciting things happened while we were sitting in the car, because we could see into the car park, and a pre-production plug-in hybrid Range Rover Evoque pulled up. That was amazing. A battery recycling company turned their truck around in front of us, and we commented on how good the driver was. You know, all these sort of things happened, and it made it like really interesting. So then, when we listened back to the recording we made, it sounded a bit like this.
James Bond for sure. I don't know why I said for sure. None of them have ever been from the Netherlands.
I have to do my very, very bad Seanery accent for a moment.
Please.
Could unplug me, please, Miss Moneypenny. I need to engage in a very high speed along these glorious mountain roads.
That's good. I can't eat with that. I used to do more. He was always my favourite.
Which, as you can judge, is what we would call in professional audio circles as completely. So now Jonny's off doing other things. He's in Amsterdam, I think, at the moment, and you know, I can't. I'm at home on my own. Getting ready to go to Norway next week, where I'll be driving a Tesla Model 3 from Copenhagen in Denmark to Norway, to Oslo, to the EV Summit in Oslo, which I'm presenting all the speakers and guests there. It's going to be very exciting. We're going to cover that journey, obviously, because it's the first time I've driven a Tesla Model 3. So we discussed all those things. I'm trying not to kind of just repeat everything we said in the podcast before, but basically that's what I'm here to do, because there's no one else to do it. What else can we do? So the whole point of the Fully Charged podcast is it's not just me talking on my own, which is what it's been for the last 2 episodes. But from now on, it won't be. I mean, that was a real punch in the guts to have that happen, to have that recording go wrong. Because I was thinking, this is a really good episode. I'm really thrilled that we did that. So anyway, I'm going to cover the basic stories that we did, because Jonny's just been to the Geneva Motor Show, where over 70% of the new cars on display had a plug. Complete transition, complete transformation of the automotive industry from, say, 10 years ago when 1 or 2 might have had a plug. Now they've all got plugs. They're not all pure battery electric. Some of them are plug-in hybrids, but they're plug-in hybrids as opposed to mild hybrids, or as they're now referred to, self-charging hybrids. Now, one of the cars that I know was on display in Geneva was the Polestar, the Polestar 2, which is an offspring of Volvo cars, which is owned by Geely, which is that Indian? I think that's an Indian company. Anyway, the Polestar 2 I saw at Goodwood Festival of Speed last year, and it's a beautiful looking car. It's a cross between a Tesla and a Volvo, but more Volvo. Really nicely done, and it's built as a competitor to the Tesla Model 3, which eventually it could be a competitor to the Tesla Model 3, but the Tesla Model 3's got about 1.5 to 2 years head start in terms of availability. Because it's not going to come out until early 2020, and it will be launched in China first of all. China now being the largest electric car market in the world. Polestar's first markets after China are the USA, Canada, Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the UK. So we will get it here eventually, but I would think 2021 at the earliest. So a lot of those cars we're going to have to wait for. It's got a quoted price at the moment of 39,900 euros for the basic version. That's That's the information for that is from the German market and includes the German market taxes and all that stuff. So, but it's it's in the range of the Tesla Model 3 what that will cost here. But of course, Polestar will only offer the launch edition to start with at an asking price of €59,900, which, as far as I'm concerned, is €60,000. You got €100 change from your 60,000. And the cheaper one will follow on after that. So I think by the time you can buy what would it be, probably by then, £40,000 Polestar, really nice car. I'm not going to slag the car off, but will be 2021. And this is a 0 to 100 kilometers in less than 5 seconds. We don't know exactly what the battery size is, but it's going to be a 250 mile range car without any doubt. And that information was from electrive.com. I would like to we're going to have to wait till we can test drive a Polestar, much longer than we've had to wait to test drive the Model 3. I mean, Jonny's already driven it, and I'm now driving one next week, and there's tens of thousands of them around. So they've got a bit of a head start. A little story came to me over the Twitters. It was heartbreaking, really, because I'm technically a big supporter of the BBC and what the BBC does and what the BBC stands for. It's been a part of my life for my entire life. It's for those of you outside the UK, it's not a tax. It's not paid for by the government. It is a publicly funded television channel, really big one, and you have to pay a license fee if you own a television. It's really under challenge and under threat at the moment, but it does produce the most amazing programs that have been incredibly successful around the world. So I'm always a big supporter of the BBC and what it's doing and the people who work there, but they do seem to have, I've decided it is a clear editorial policy to always run with the most negative stories across their vast platform about electric cars, and I do not know why. I used to have a daft conspiracy theory when Jeremy Clarkson was still working with the BBC, that it was because they're all terrified of him and they didn't dare promote electric cars or give anything like a realistic appraisal of electric cars in case it upset him, because he is a giant balding bully, which is fine, and he's funny. I will defend his right to exist and be funny till my dying day, even though I agree with nothing he's ever said or thought. But this article is on the BBC Science Focus webpage, which is aimed at kids. It's aimed at school children and a little bit older. It's basic science, loads of really interesting science there. Loads of really good people work for the BBC Focus Science thing. They've been in touch with me on Twitter, because I had a little rant on Twitter to say, let's talk about it. Well, yeah, we can talk about it, but you did publish this article. It is a masterclass in misinformation and primary school level logic. This is what they say. It says, if we replace all cars on the road today with an electric equivalent, there's 35 million cars on the road of the UK today, it's estimated we would need an additional 18 gigawatts of power. Estimated by who? What is the source? There's nothing on the page, it's just a blank coverall statement, but it's the BBC, so it's proper, and it must be true. So do you simply multiply 35 million cars by the amount of power they draw? Yes, that's the only way you can get to that figure of 18 gigawatts of power. So that means, because clearly this hasn't been thought through very cleverly, that means that everyone in the UK who has an electric car, or all 35 million of them, have to find a charger and plug in at exactly the same moment. And then you would need 18 gigawatts of extra generating capacity. Just the same as now, today, it's normal, isn't it? We all know that everyone goes to fill up their petrol and diesel cars at exactly the same moment, the precise second they all do it. Now, just supposing we did that today, just supposing everyone decided to go and fill their cars up at exactly the same moment, how long do you think that would take? I'll tell you, it would take days, because each garage would run out of petrol and diesel within about half an hour. And there would be absolute pandemonium and chaos, and it would be a nightmare. And exactly the same argument applies to electric cars. There's just no way you can do it. It's not possible. It's just insanely crude preschool mathematical logic. It is absurd and deeply, deeply offensive. Here's the next bit they then do. They say the new £20 billion Hinkley nuclear power station in Somerset will produce 3.2 gigawatts once it opens in 2025. So we may need another 6 of these to meet demand. I.e. what they're saying, what the BBC is saying is, forget electric cars, it's impossible, we just can't make it happen. But here's the other little bit of stuff they've sunk in there, whoever wrote this filth, because I'm calling it filth, BBC. It's such offensive trash, it deserves to be called that. The new Hinkley nuclear power station in Somerset, 1, won't be open in 2025. If it's open in 2035, they'll have done well. 2, it isn't going to cost £20 billion. That was the initial price before they started building it. It's already at £28 billion, and it will double that. And it won't be open for 10 to 15 years. And why do I say that with such confidence? Because there are 2 other power stations being built on exactly the same design, precisely the same design. One in France, which is now 10 years and 20 billion euros over budget, and one in Finland. I sometimes say Norway. No, it's not Norway, it's Finland, which is 8 years behind schedule, and I think that one is about 200 billion. It's going to cost. I can't even remember the figures. Forget the figures, but it's 8 years behind schedule because they're incredibly complicated things to build, and they need a massive grid infrastructure to support them. And renewables are much easier to distribute and much cheaper to install and much quicker to install. But forget all that, because this page is just really, really annoying. What about intelligent charging management that Electric Nation have been running for the last couple of years, and vehicle to grid, and the fact that we need to be aiming for fewer cars and car sharing and all those things? No, forget all that. We can't have electric cars, the BBC tells us so. Well, there's someone who doesn't agree with the BBC, and his name is Bond. James Bond. And in the new James Bond movie, he is going to be driving an electric Aston Martin. Oh, how times have changed. Now, I'm going to do a very, very bad Sean Connery impression, which I did for Jonny, and he was uniquely, really, because sometimes I do things and he's impressed with my talents, but this time he wasn't. He just sat there staring off into the distance. I think he got quite depressed. But this is my Sean Connery impression. Could you unplug me, please, Miss Moneypenny? I need to engage in a very high-speed chase along these glorious mountain roads. There we go. According to reports, the film will see Daniel Craig's 007 behind the wheel of an Aston Martin Rapid E. And they're only making 155 of them. They're being built in the UK by the iconic manufacturer. So, that is, I think, quite interesting that for the first time James Bond will drive an electric vehicle, because it's going to be phenomenally fast, very high-performance car. We hope to see very soon on Fully Charged. There's lots of rumours, but I'm not allowed to tell you anything about anything, and there's lots and lots of NDAs flying about. But there we go. That's very exciting. James Bond, yeah. VW ID. Now, some of you who watch Fully Charged on YouTube will have seen me having a test drive of the very early iteration of the VW ID late last year. The order books are going to open for the VW ID. I'm sure it'll end up being called something else, but that's its title at the moment, on May the 8th this year. So you can actually pre-order your ID fully electric car in May this year, almost 6 months before the car is officially revealed. So the final car, the final production version of this car, will be revealed at the Frankfurt Motor Show this autumn. Now, the company's brand board member for sales, Jürgen Steckmann, revealed the plan for early reservations of this golf-sized hatchback at VW's brand press conference last week. And he said the first stage of this electric car journey will get underway on May the 8th. That is when pre-booking for the ID starts. Starting then, customers who want to be among the very first ID owners can make a down payment to secure an early production slot. I think it's not improbable that the launch edition will already have sold out before the ID is unveiled at the Frankfurt Motor Show. The numbers being reported by our dealers indicate that. So there is some interest in the Volkswagen ID, which is really, really encouraging. Let me just reiterate the fact that that car, and I drove a really early version, it was pretty slick even when I drove it. I could tell that the all the stuff in the cabin, the driver's information was still very crude. That wasn't working properly, which is why they wouldn't let us show it. They wouldn't even let us show the shape of the screens. We had to film it very carefully and edit it very carefully. They were very strict about that. And that wasn't up to scratch. But the actual drivetrain, the handling, the size of it is just perfect. It's like driving a really, 8th generation Golf, but better. The turning circle is comically brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Rear-wheel drive. It's a rear-wheel drive, 4-door hatchback, brilliant little car. I just absolutely loved it. And now here's a story that's not about cars. And not only is it not about cars, it's from the Mail Online. Now, it is not often that we refer to the Mail Online on the Fully Charged show in any way. It's not my favourite publication, but this is a very interesting story. It's been covered on lots of different media outlets, but it is the end of the gas boiler. Now, fossil fuel heating systems will be banned in all British new builds from 2025. Of course, according to the Mail Online, adding £5,000 to average house price, which is utter nonsense. That is not true. That is, as old Trumpy Pants would say, fake news. But Philip Hammond, who is in the current government, I believe he's the Chancellor. Don't know for how long. He was this morning when I heard the news. Might not be now, or he might be again later on. They're all, anyway, we won't even mention what's going on with that crowd of professionals. But he announced that gas boilers will be banned from all new build homes. And the Chancellor's announcement is seen as part of a Tory appeal to young voters. Oh, so young voters care about climate change, old voters really don't. Well, that's been verified quite often on my Twitter channel, that's for sure. But what are we going to use instead? What are we going to use instead if we don't use gas to heat our homes? Well, we're going to use heat pumps, which 8 years ago, I think I did a show on Fully Charged about them 8 years ago, and I know I did a program about them for Channel 5 many more years ago, and they were great big white things that went outside your house, great big box the size of a large fridge, and they were very expensive, and they blew lukewarm air into your house. Didn't matter what the temperature was outside, they would always they would extract heat from the air outside, air source heat pumps, but they weren't the most practical thing, and it would have been very difficult to fit them in a lot of homes. That has changed, along with the price of batteries, the price of solar, the cost of installing offshore wind. All those things have changed, but very often big media outlets like the Daily Mail haven't got a clue and haven't kept up. So they're living in a world that is in about 2010. They've got that far into the future, but they're still about 9 years behind the curve. But anyway, air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps have become much cheaper to install, much cheaper to manufacture, far more effective, and much cheaper to run. Much cheaper to run. Now, it might be for the first couple of years they're slightly more expensive to install than gas boilers, because we've been making gas boilers since the war, or before, since the middle of the last century. So, they are hugely inefficient, as always. They've got much better, I'm not going to argue that, but in the same way as internal combustion engines have got much better, but they're still burning fossil fuel to produce heat when we don't need to anymore. So this is, I think, a brilliant piece of news, even though it's on the Daily Mail. We'll put links to all these things underneath the podcast. Sorry, there's all, because it's the Daily Mail. There's hundreds and hundreds of adverts pinging up all the time to make it very hard to read. So if we did, because I often go off on a rant about new homes. There's a lot of houses being built in the UK at the moment. They're all being built with technology that dates from about 2000. So they're not really well insulated. The windows aren't really very good. There's much better ones. They don't use solar when they're building a new house. Put solar on it. That's the cheapest way of doing it, you morons. You knuckle-dragging building people. God, it's so pathetic. Some of you may know. No, you won't know because we haven't put anything out yet. We've been recording the development of affordable houses in a town called Neath, which is outside Swansea in South Wales, where they're building 28 affordable homes. They cost exactly the same to build as the most basic affordable homes in this country. The same cost per square metre, but these houses will be so cheap to live in for the people who live there because they have the whole roof is solar. They have ground source heating for all of the houses. They have a ground source heating system which will heat all the homes. They will be net contributors to the local grid over a year. They'll be connected to the grid. They're not self-sufficient or, off the grid or anything stupid like that. They are proper homes that people can live in who don't earn a lot of money, who aren't posh, whatever. I'm supposed to be living in an elitist bubble with my solar panels. Just normal people who have jobs and don't have a lot of extra cash. Well, they will have extra cash if they live in these houses because they'll be cheaper to live in, which the likes of the Daily Mail really don't understand. I mean, talk about elitist. The journalists. I met one of the most rude, vile people in a lift in the Daily Mail offices in London. I wasn't going to the Daily Mail. I was going to some friends who work in an office below them. Just the most unpleasant human being I've ever met. He recognised me, and he really didn't like me, and he let that be known. And I just thankfully got out of the lift and just walked away. I mean, just vile. Who would work for this vile rag? But anyway, I've given them a plug. And I can't put the link under this one. I cannot put a link to the Daily Fail. I really can't. That's enough of that. Now, lastly, because I never know how to say this car name. This is why I need Jonny. I let him say it when we recorded this together. Dacia, I call it. Dacia. Dacia. How do you say that? Anyway, then they are launching a shockingly affordable electric car. That's what they're doing. And it will occupy the budget space of the EV market in the same way as the Sandero and the Duster do in the petrol and diesel markets. Dacia's European chairman, Jean-Christophe Kugler, said that the EV will remain true to the Dacia brand's ethos. If it's Dacia, I'm really sorry about this because I keep saying Dacia. I don't think it's Dacia. Maybe it is. But what he said is, we will remain shockingly affordable. We won't change our brand territory. There we go. But of course, they are part of the Renault-Nissan alliance, so they're part of a much bigger automotive manufacturers, and they have the ability to get that technology. It's ready and on the shelf, so they can. So they don't have to develop all that stuff themselves. They have that technology. They don't have to negotiate, is what they've said, and they're likely to borrow heavily from electric cars manufactured by parent company Renault, which produces EVs such as the Zoe. Of course, there's a new Zoe coming out this year, which is exciting, but that is obviously being affected by the Osborne effect, which I think we talked about in a previous episode. So they're keeping very quiet about it. They haven't specified a time, but it will be in 3 or 4 years. Oh, well, that's good, isn't it? Well, 2020 to 2021. So they don't say what's going to be affordable. I don't know what that means. Will it be a £10,000 electric car? That would be affordable for a lot more people. I've got a feeling it will be a little bit more than that. But, it's quite a good bit of news. I mean, what is great is, because what gets all the headlines are, the Aston Martins, the Mercedes, the Teslas, the Rimacs, all those things, the high speed, high end, flashy, supercar electric stuff, which is great that that's happening. But what's really important is that there are developed normal cars that are good for car sharing, that are good for people who can't afford flashy electric cars. Those things are all important because that will drive up, and it's well proven, it's happened many times before, that will drive up the installation of public charging. That will mean that when you build a new multi-storey car park, one of the things you fit, as well as lights, stairs, ticket barrier, is electric car chargers. It's just so easy to do. When you're building a new car park, do that. I went to the largest solar car park in the world in Australia. Recently built extension to a massive shopping mall. And a huge, I mean, we're talking probably 200 or 300 kilowatts of solar on the roof of the car park, which makes a lot of sense in Australia. And what it does is it produces loads of electricity for all the shops that are downstairs and all the air conditioning, and it makes economic sense. That's the thing. Nuclear power, I'm not opposed to nuclear power at all, but at the moment it doesn't make economic sense. It's big, costly, centralised power generation. It's 20th century thinking about power generation. Power generation this century is going to be low cost, distributed, widely owned. That makes a lot of sense. And networked intelligently using all the clever networky stuff that we've got knocking around. And that's what's going to be exciting. Anyway, this is I'm really sort of happy to be doing this podcast. I'm also really depressed and annoyed that our software let us down when we had recorded a brilliant episode with all those topics. Those are the topics we talked about. But obviously it had Jonny's input, and Jonny's input is invaluable. And we will make sure we will double, quintuple check next time not to make such a monumental foul up. So I used a generic, non-gender specific term for birds, fowl. That covers all of them. Foul up again. Although, of course, foul, when you have a foul up, is F-O-U-L. I don't think it's F-O-W-L, is it? I hope to get some comments about that. But please do now. There's a lot of new episodes we have piled up for Fully Charged on YouTube. Some really exciting ones coming up. I'm just editing at the moment an episode about the solar train I had a ride on in Australia, and it is so lovely. It is a solar powered train, simple as that. It's got loads of solar panels on the roof, and it goes tiddly-dum, tiddly-dum, tiddly-dum. It's got batteries, electric motors. It's a solar train. It makes a lot of sense in Australia. There's quite a lot of solar there, mate. Anyway, that's enough for now. Do subscribe to this podcast, please. It's going very well, and lots of people are subscribing to it. But if each week it's just me ranting on my own, I think we'll have less subscribers. So I do promise you there's other people going to be involved. We're going to interview lots of guests. We've done some already, but they're not ready yet. So we're going to do this, why this one's going out now. Next week's episode will be legendary. Please to check out Fully Charged on YouTube if you've never seen it. I think you'll enjoy it, and all those things. And as always, if you have been, thank you for listening. Sorry about that, Ben. Did not expect to sneeze just then. That might need a little trim.